Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Forever Classic Games Podcast, the place where we just sort of geek out and nerd out and find meaning in all sorts of pop culture, video games, comic books, anything you want to throw at us. We try to make it more than it seems. And sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes we're pushing it. I am joined tonight by my esteemed colleagues and good friends, Alex and Zach. How you doing?
Good, man.
Things are looking up. Things are very busy, but I am alive and I will thrive.
Alive and thrive. Woo, woo, woo. So what are you guys up to? Have a good weekend?
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into it in the Geek Peek. The past couple weekends have been kind of dedicated to that, but we've been putting a lot of effort and time and money into getting the new place set up. And so we have a big couch now, which is incredible. Our living room feels way more cozy with that big couch in there. And then
Your previous couch was one of the worst sleeping. It was fine to sit in. Sleeping on that thing, though, it was probably one of the worst nights of sleep I've had in a long time.
Yep. I forgot that you slept on that couch. So if you come over again, it's a much better sleeping experience. I've slept on this couch. It's great.
Sweet.
Totally
Can't
fine.
wait.
But we also got some new cookware that's fancy enough that I'm fucking terrified to use it like I do regular cookware. But I've always had really crappy pans, and so it's weird now that I can just cook my food, spray it off with the hose in the sink, and it's clean because it's just that nonstick. It's crazy. It's like some neat ceramic coating, something or other. It's awesome.
Sweet. It was a long weekend for me. Had some personal family stuff come up, but we're getting through it, figuring it out. And spend some time doing some freelance work and watch.
Is that anything you can brag about, or do you own an NDA for that?
It's not really an NDA, but it's fine. It's not super exciting.
Right on. Motion graphic stuff though?
Yeah.
Always cool.
The biggest trouble is just finding the time to work on it outside of my full-time job.
It's a time-consuming thing. Dude, that's the biggest struggle right now, right? We own and operate, and I am basically the lead editor, so to speak, on our website, right? And it's this whole time, right? I'm like, oh, I gotta sit down and write an article. But after the end of being on my computer, writing press releases and stuff, it's man, I don't want to even look at a video game for 3 hours. And then by then it's 9:30, and I'm 30, so I'm tired. And I just lay in bed and question all existence for 4 hours until I fall asleep.
No, that's the thing that I'm running into too. Is I get home after walking 12 to 14,000 steps, working in the warehouse, and I'm like, I just want to a little bit different. I just want to play a video game. I don't want to do more work.
Right.
My brain is just not in the spot for it.
I will say the Steam Deck has been super valuable. The issue that I'm running into now is there's a little too many things to play. Because I'm well, I could spend some time cranking through Rowdy Out of Stories on the PS2 emulator and maybe write about that and talk about that and try to find a way to get some cool screenshots out of it or whatever. But the issue becomes but there's this neat indie that I got for $1, or there's this game that I forgot I had, or I wonder if this works on the Steam Deck. And so it's just a nightmare of choice paralysis sometimes.
Yeah, choice paralysis is very real, which is why I sometimes will intentionally only have certain things installed so that, if I want to play a different game, I'm going to have to wait for it to download and be ready.
Yep. My go-to when I spend 20 minutes thinking about it, and if I can't figure it out by then, it's either Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster or Final Fantasy IX if I've got the Switch in my hands. Because 9 we need to play for that other show, which I guess we could bring up now that I think about it. We have a new podcast that's on the same feed.
Sister show.
Yeah, it's a little idea that Justin Wood, one of our contributors there for a while, was really into. He's why don't y'all just talk about a single game and release weekly? And we're well, we could probably do it. And so through a lot of planning, we finally figured out how to do it. And so basically we have the ability to record episodes way ahead of time. And so we're calling it the Grand Electric Archives, which is what happens when I'm given full creative control and have to come up with a concept on a Monday morning, because I went high concept. The entire premise of the show is it exists in a pocket dimension in between the electrons of static waves or some, I don't know, Twin Peaks related something or other. And so inside this pocket dimension is this big library where you get left the heck alone. And it's run by a little wizard, VV looking dude. And they just kind of let you in. You play your thing, you talk about your thing, you study whatever you want, and then you go home.
Alex, you raised the bar too high.
I know. This is the problem. So that's the concept. And we'll kind of run with it maybe, and I don't know, maybe we'll find somebody to make us a mascot or something between here and there. Because generally we were looking for a mascot character anyways, and I'm like, well, maybe this will play into that. And so the basic idea is we play a game like a book club. We play it as much as we can. We do a bunch of research. Sometimes we get supplemental materials, like for the first episode is about Nier Automata, which is me and Justin. And I picked up like a couple of the books that are like published by Square Enix that you can pick up at like a Barnes & Noble or whatever. And then I watched a bunch of the anime and read up on timelines, and it was a whole project. And so that's kind of what you can expect week by week. The next couple games is Resident Evil 2 Remake, which is recorded, and then Mega Man 2 and Tunic are some of the upcoming ones. So if anybody wants to play along by the time this comes out, those are some episodes to sit down and maybe send us an email or something on.
And so that's alternating with this one.
Yes.
Same feed.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are really only here for the three of us nerds being dumb, sorry, still waiting every other week. But if you want some actually enlightened, thoughtful conversation, high concept, that'll be on the other week. But if you're cool with going back and forth, just keep tuning in every week. And that's a great way to support us. Give us a review. But with that in mind, Zach, what are some other ways that people can support Forever Classic?
Well, people can support Forever Classic. Of course, we've got a Patreon. It needs a little bit of work still because we haven't updated stuff in it in a while because we're bad.
It's because we ain't have enough time, man.
Yeah, we don't.
I need like 3 more people that do everything that I do, and then maybe we can get through like everything.
I just need something to go work my day job for me, and I could do whatever we need.
Can y'all get with the program and make some Patreon donations so that maybe I can do this for a living? Come on,
guys! Our first goal is like $200,000 for the three of us to split 3 ways and make Forever Classic
annually.
Our annual, just full-time job.
Yep.
Get on it. Thanks, folks. Appreciate
you.
Yeah.
Thanks, gamers.
But of course, if you are reading anything from any of the authors that we have that you like and you want to support them directly, you can, of course, tip them directly through their author profiles, or I don't think there's another name for it. But
no,
basically,
just their bios. Their bylines.
Bio. That's the fucking word. I couldn't think of it. But when you click their bio or their author profile, you'll be able to go in and see links to, if they've got a Ko-Fi, if they've got a PayPal, a Venmo, something, Cash App set up, something like that you can donate to them directly outside of us. Because we're here to support everybody that supports with us as well, as much as we can. Of course, if you need to reach us for anything, you can email us over at contact@foreverclassicgames.com. That is our new email address. It's, I guess, at this point, not really new, because it's been a couple months, but it's the way to get a hold of us.
Found it.
See, that's the important people. Now, that's not to say our viewers are not important, but those people getting a hold of us are pretty important.
We make it really easy to find us, which you should do if you're in content creation at all. Make your email visible in some capacity, please. For God's sakes, I just want to send people games.
But other than that, you can come over and join our Discord community. We keep growing little by little, and we have some fun conversations. And we talk a lot about food and gardening.
Food is probably the big equalizer, and definitely the most popular, text channel on the thing.
Yeah, lots and lots of good food in there.
It's like food and Destiny, and when Monster Hunter is new, it's Monster Hunter for like a month or 2.
Yeah, we do have a bunch of us that play Destiny.
Mm-hmm.
People regularly post in some like in film and video about what movies they're watching, music they're listening to,
cool
art
videos
they're looking
we find
at,
online.
anime they're watching. So there's a lot of opportunities for good conversation. I just shared a weird song that I listened to the other day.
Yeah, you did.
Artist called Wolf, and a song called "I Can't Party." It's something. If you'll understand that I like weird shit.
The weirder the better, man, in my opinion. Like, there's something to be said about artists who just lean into it full force, not caring what anybody think, right? And doing what they can with whatever they've got.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But thanks, Zach, for letting folks know what they can do to support us if they'd like to. But all in all, just thank you for listening and being here. And that brings us to the Geek Peek.
Whoa, y'all are gonna get a peek at this geek this week. Oh man.
Wow.
I got the geekiest peek you ever did seek.
Seeking the Geek Peek from my peeps.
You want me to start, actually?
Go for it.
All right, so a little game came out called
about
Star
Alex.
Wars Jedi Survivor, and I liked it.
Wow.
Which is kind of a miracle because it came out and everybody's like, wow, this game runs like butt. And if you're playing on PC, you'd be right. But it worked fine. We got a review copy, which there will be a review by the time this goes up on foreverclassicgames.com. So shout outs to the people that made that happen. Always appreciate being involved with our peers. We got it like maybe a day before launch, and so I spent basically the entire weekend playing it with my partner Gina, and we had a lot of fun because she adored Fallen Order, and so just hanging out and playing, finding new like Jedi stuff, and doing all the cool, crazy like platforming sections they're kind of endurance based, but they just look really cool. You're chaining together wall jumps into grappling hooks, and just kind of like using your surroundings and traversing in a way that feels really similar to something like Doom Eternal's platforming, where it's kind of like showy and it still takes some skill, but it's not that hard, and it's really forgiving in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and this will feed into our topic today too a little bit, because I really want to play that game.
Yeah, but it should be really good by the time you get a hold of it, because even though it was like fine on PS5, like we ran into some very weird things. I don't know what it is with this particular franchise and characters bouncing into place every time the camera cuts. It drives me nuts. But the thing is the structure and the actual gameplay and the emphasis they put on like the characters and the world and all the different things you find. It's just really visually appealing if you're super into Star Wars. And so it was, despite even like more random issues and visual glitches and weird frame rate drops at times, despite all that, I still was compelled to play it and beat it, and we had a lot of fun doing it, because it's just a better game, honestly, in my opinion, as far as the structure and like the course of events. I kind of wish there was at least one really nostalgic Star Wars like planet, because you get 2 or 3 of those in Fallen Order, and you do get like one cool planet, but most everything else is kind of like, eh. Well, you do get Coruscant, yeah. You get some like not top, you get some lower levels of Coruscant. That's kind of cool, and you get Jeddah, but you don't get like a Hoth or insert other famous. You don't go to Mandalore or anything like that, which would be really really cool, because in the first one you go to Dathomir and all the like witch shit's going on, and it wasn't as interesting in that regard. I
sort of agree with you, but I also sort of disagree with you, because everything Star Wars is a nod to itself.
Yeah, I know. It's a really weak point of criticism, but would have been cool. Would make a great DLC.
I'm going to interject here because I opened up Jedi Survivor on Steam to look at it. One of the game tags for Jedi Survivor is Metroidvania.
Yes, it is very like reverential to the Metroid series.
Even the first one was the way you would like get abilities and equipment and backtrack to areas to gain access to things you could see before but couldn't get to, was pretty much core to its exploration.
See,
and
I
think there's straight up a Metroid reference in the game somewhere.
Oh yeah,
I would imagine.
Yeah, so you know in Metroid when the little animals that you save at the end of the game, well, you could choose to save in Super Metroid, how they teach you how to do a super jump run in the original Metroid, or Super Metroid. There's a bit where the little fuzzy animals like do wall jumping, and Cal's like, oh, I wonder if we can do that, which is clearly a Metroid reference. But it's not necessarily like, it has Metroidvania elements, but it's not like core to the experience. All in all, this game feels like a hopped up Uncharted with really cool combat.
I
And,
love
like, beat 'em up
Uncharted and I
elements.
love Star Wars, so this sounds great. And I loved the first game.
We
And
critical
so-
path it. Now we're doing all the like exploration and stuff. So there's enough things to go look for. You can collect fish. You can get all sorts of different outfits.
Yeah,
Different lightsaber pieces.
The completionist episode on it was pretty, as usual, Gerard is super thorough. He almost seemed like less inclined to complete this one than the previous one, just because there was more stuff for less reward. And it kind of runs into the same issue as the first one, where you'd, what's that? Dive down into a hidden area or do some complicated like platforming and end up getting a hairstyle.
Yep.
And
at least it's not a poncho is the big, like, it still could be better, but at least you don't have like, one or two different outfits that you're just getting colors for. It's moment to moment. It's fairly rewarding. All the story stuff is fun. Cal is like blank slate of a character, man. He's not terribly interesting. He goes through one or two really like neat arcs and story moments, but a lot of what you're sticking around in Survivor 4 is the supporting cast and the villains, and those are awesome.
Yeah. So what about you?
Definitely
Zach?
worth picking up eventually.
What about you, Zach? I'll go. Well, no, I'll go first, and you'll go last because yours is like huge. Yours is like a big old thing, and mine's sort of like, oh, look at me goofing around, making dumb stuff. I finally, I've done some dabbling in like AI image generation with some like free stuff, or occasionally like goofing around with a buddy of mine who pays for, I think, Midjourney. Did some digging, and Stable Diffusion is an open source AI image generator, and you can pay them for their resources, fairly affordable, honestly, and use their like hardware to generate images. Or you can just take the source code and install it natively and use your own hardware if you've got hardware that supports. So it requires an NVIDIA card. So AMD unfortunately loses out here, but I've got it installed. It uses my Chrome browser, and it has like, I used what was specifically called Easy Diffusion, which is sort of like an automated installation of it, so that it just runs through your browser. It has the software and accesses it there through that venue. You type in your prompt, any images you want it to reference, different styles, artists, to even different cameras or types of shots, landscape, portrait, like all that stuff, and set it up and hit go. And depending on your hardware, you can render multiple images at once, or bigger, or there's lots of different options to do that. But I was taking the portraits from the Daddy Gamer charity stream from last year. We did a photo shoot with us in our costumes, and I've been taking each of those and just running it through different filters, running it through different prompts, trying to manipulate it and change it, give it different styles, and it is coming up with some wondrous, horrible things to look at. And I am having a grand old time just goofing around in it and experimenting and doing all sorts of stuff. It did some horrible things to my daughter's baby pictures.
That's the worst thing you've sent me so far. As far as like, ugh.
There was actually a pretty decent one where I had it turn her old, and if you covered up like part of the top part of the face, it straight up looked like my mother-in-law.
Weird.
So it was like, okay, there's like something here. This actually sort of could be part of what my daughter might look like when she's old. But that's sort of what I've been experimenting with. The long-term goal is to be able to use it as a part, like as a tool in my design, animation, motion work, or even just regular video work in a similar way that Corridor Digital used Stable Diffusion in their rock, paper, scissors anime video, where they applied AI to video that they shot to give it a style choice to make it anime rather than drawing anime. And it was, for them, a big old experiment, caused some copyright controversy because they were clearly referencing and using images from Vampire Hunter D to create this, and that spurs conversation, a conversation that should happen for sure to make sure that artists' rights and proper like monetization is happening and compensation. But for now, I'm just goofing around with it. But there are some artists that I've been talking to that have used it where they create a render out of Blender or their 3D modeling software of choice, and they will take each frame of their render with different prompts and style guides or even different training and feed it through that to give it just a little bit more of than what the render originally had. And so they can get some really interesting style choices that would take hundreds of more hours to try and accomplish. They were able to give like some sort of like, they had a water simulation with a low resolution. So it was just sort of, you could tell it was water, but it didn't look great. They applied that water layer through it, and it gave it some like texture, and it gave it like a style. And when composited back together with the rest of the image, it looked fantastic. And so there's some really cool stuff that you can do with this that I want to start learning how to do before the industry just leaves me behind. And I think the sooner artists sort of grab onto this and figure out how to use it effectively, like, no, me using it is different than the owner of the machine shop who just wants to type in, make me auto shop commercial for my store. You know, it's, you can do that, which is where you get amazing things like the Pizza Hug Spot fake AI commercial, which is freaking hilarious. If you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend checking it out. But it's just been an interesting process overall, just like on the like technical geeky side of things, where I'm having fun generating these silly images, turning my friends into like muscle bound action heroes or like horrific homeless men. But it's also just like a good learning experience of what this tool is capable of, where those dials are, what should I change if I want certain effects. But there's also, because this is open source, people are sharing their own training models. So you can add to the database of training models or create your own. So if I had hundreds of images of my style or a style, like if I hired an artist and had their style attributed to it, I could train a model specifically to only reference these attributes of this particular style and use that to generate images as well. So I think that's part of what I'm missing, is that like isolation of style to get more reliable results in what I'm looking for, or more predictable results. But looking at the current list of available, like someone had compiled a list, and I would say well over half of them are just pornography based. Because the most default training models avoid that content for good reason. So the community is like, well, we'll fill that hole, literally.
There's a whole bunch of like AI generated waifus out there, which,
oh yeah, there's like,
I mean, to be fair, I mean, there's a reason why certain art styles are so pervasive, right? Like, there's an anime girl out there for literally everything.
Yeah, I've got 11 training models of waifus.
Right.
I've got furry, Rule 34.
So many options.
Things I don't want to say on this podcast.
Perfect. One of these days we might hit it decent.
It's just funny that half of the list is just horny people training models so that they can fill a particular niche that they want to be able to make out of AI art.
I have a lot of issues with AI from a work standpoint. They're actively, like, people at the top, these publishing folks that have all this money and are only there for the bottom dollar, are already making layoffs and cuts because of AI.
It's an exciting thing to like explore and learn how to utilize, and like it can be used effectively. But I don't trust the people that have the money to see it as any other way, as a cost-saving measure for themselves, so they can just continue to generate more.
I think there's something to be said about the experimentation of it, like being able to quickly render like the general framework and put it into 18 different styles in like 10 minutes. Like, that's helpful as a place to start. Where I have trouble with it is the fact that a lot of the reason these AIs work is because they're scraping millions of stolen images. And that's where ultimately all the talent is stolen from anyways. So we're already in a weird, like, I love genre work, right? Which is a form of derivatives. It's a form of emulation. It's a form of imitation in its base level form. And there's a lot of exciting, cool things you can do within genre. However, it's even more derivative whenever you're taking something and basically running it in a giant filter and being like, this distilled is anime waifu, and then coming up with a thing that is holistically not yours. It is just a distilled, like, amalgamation of all these concepts and ideas, which most art is, but to a lesser extent than what that literally is. And this is where I'm, like, holistically against AI. Like, I don't want it on my computer. It's fine enough when, like, you or Dave sends us an image, and he's like, check out this cool, like, Gundam that I made with AI. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of neat. Cool. But I, like, at the base level, unless you're doing a shit post and you're using it to, like, get started on something, like, I'm very much against AI. It's a rough path to be walking down, and as soon as it's exploitative at a top level, people are going to lose out on their livelihoods en masse.
Well, that's like the next point is our friend was saying he just like, hey, I need a treatment plan for this person in this situation doing this and has this disorder. And it created a treatment plan perfectly, exactly how he was taught for his master's program in like psychology.
Sure.
And then he did it again for totally different circumstances, and it did it again.
There are certain applications that work better than others. Like a friend of mine who works in programming, I was just talking to the other day, and he's like, you know, if you try to make your AI do your code, it'll make the basic idea of it. It'll just be really shitty. So what he does is he'll be like, hey, transfer this into C or whatever. And then he'll like go through, and basically he's the editor at that point. And he's like, okay, this works, this doesn't work. And so it saves him a little bit of time in the bulk coding process. And I get that. That kind of makes sense to me.
A huge time saver.
Yeah, that's super cool.
But he's not going to get paid more for being more efficient with it.
Right. That's the other issue, right? Is you're kind of paid on job, you're paid on, you know, hourly rate. So like, I don't know. It's something that will be a bigger part of the conversation. And like, we don't have regulations handling the video game industry, like hardly at all. Like, it's basically the Wild West. Game designers can put fucking anything in their games, and it's resulted in what? Loot boxes, insane levels of marketing, predatory shit, all sorts of disgusting ways that people make like hate groups and things in MMOs since the 90s. Like, and government regulators are very, very slow, and AI is moving very, very fast, like faster than most things.
Considering that we've got representatives in our government asking the CEO of Google about an iPhone, and the CEO of Google's like, that's a completely different company. You'd have to ask them about an iPhone, and then them being like, well, it could have been an Android, and it's just like, you are asking a question and ignoring the answer because it's not what you want to hear. You just want to bully this man. You know, not that I have any particular opinion over the CEO of Google, just CEOs in general I find to be pretty exploitive.
Yeah.
But it's like, it'll be interesting to see how we react to AI, what we do as creators to set ourselves apart from AI and protect ourselves from AI. And then, like, also new things we're going to need to learn to protect ourselves just in general, because already people are getting phone calls from their daughter saying, I need you to send me money right now. I'm in the hospital.
And it'll generate the voice track.
Only that it was
That's
just
crazy.
Stolen voice from something else recording or like whatever, and it was a scammer using a voice print of their daughter to scam money out of them.
This is what I'm saying. Like, all this stuff is moving super fast. It convinces people with like base understandings of things. Like right now, there's a whole program going on that's studying a new level of propaganda that is insane.
Yep.
Like they can get, you know, any presidential candidate saying anything to anyone automatically. And so suddenly there's a whole population out there who is very easily convinced it's dangerous. Ultimately, I think it'll be outlawed, but I don't think it'll be outlawed soon enough.
And I don't think that'll be worldwide either. So it wouldn't matter if it were just done in our country. It would It would still happen because it'll happen everywhere else. So I don't think it'll...
Genie's out of the bottle at this point.
Yeah, it's out and it's going to grow. But on you talking about that thing, like presidential bodies doing stuff, there's a fucking TikTok that keeps coming up on my feed, and it's this series of a bunch of people, or of a bunch of presidents, like a bunch of them, either playing D&D or playing Magic.
Yeah.
And it's just like they're using pictures of them and then using AI voice, and it sounds just like them talking.
It's on one hand, it's a funny shitpost. On the other hand, it's fucking terrifying.
Yes. But, well, particularly right now with the writer's strike happening.
Entire BuzzFeed was shut down, and their plan was to replace them with ChatGPT. This is the thing that concerns me the most.
Yeah. What's stopping Hollywood from being like, yeah, we don't really need your Writers Guild anymore, so there is no deal to strike. We are going to pay this robot to do it.
That's the issue.
And
the thing is TV will get worse. You would think, you would hope. But people will still consume it, right? If it lands in certain genres and certain marketing circles, right? Like, if they pitch it a certain way, they could absolutely get by without writers. They could get by without CG artists. Like, there's so many ways that they could cut people out and make more freaking money.
Which is what the ironic part is I was reading something about how someone was being told that their job might be replaced by AI by their boss, and their boss was like, well, you know, we're the ones that do the data analysis and make a decision on whether or not something has a logistic like possibility of succeeding based off of past metrics of similar content, or, you know, this thing could do well with the sequel and generate money based off of these revenue scores and things like that. She's like, it's all a data numbers game. That sounds like something a robot would be really good at doing. In fact, It sounds like something an AI could do a lot easier than it could recreate what I make on a daily basis. At what point is AI going to fold in on itself and start creating AI-generated content based off of AI-generated content, and then we get that copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, which just degraded over time? But I also have faith in humanity in a sense that, say, Hollywood fails to make a deal with the writer's strike because they're going to rely on AI. You don't think that the giant community of creators isn't going to find a way to just like screw over Hollywood in support of all of these people anyway? Like, if these people on the top want to make money, don't screw over the thousands of people who make it possible for you.
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing too that I think is really important in this discussion is consumer education is a very big part of it, right? Like, if collectively humanity's like, well, a bunch of like gross soup people got together and made a bunch of computers make my TV show, I'd rather that be written by George, who's been writing it for 30 years or whatever. Like, if people can just be aware what they're actually consuming and who makes it. I mean, that's part of like what we do here at Forever Classic, right? Like, we tell the stories of the things that have been made when we have the opportunity to do so. We talk to the people that sit down and pixel by pixel oftentimes create these things and give them life. I mean, we could never do that with something that was AI generated. And I think that you lose that human element, and it is in fact less valuable, and hopefully that is reflected when these things go to market. Yeah. If an AI generated anime comes out and everybody buys all the merch, then what are we doing?
Yeah, what I think, like in your case, where AI could come in handy is someone who maybe is not they want to tell their story, or they have a good story to tell, but they lack the like grammar knowledge. If they can type it out and put in that human side of it, and then feed it through an AI editor for correction in terms of just grammar, it makes it more appealing, saves them the thousands and thousands of hours of trying to like correct it themselves and failing, to maybe get it in front of a publisher who might publish their story, or make it at least readable to an audience. Like, this is going to give people who had limited access to storytelling and in tools a much broader ability to tell those stories and create things that they couldn't do before. And for people like me, sure, it sort of feels defeating, like, oh great, now anyone can just like type in, give me a logo for Daddy Gamer, and find some options and maybe go off of those or whatever. But the way I'm going to utilize AI with my past knowledge and my expertise is going to push it further, and it's still going to look better in the end than someone with no expertise or knowledge, even though it's still drawing from images from like people who are good at this. Based off of what I've seen, AI also still draws inspiration. These models are built off of also very terrible art. Like, every image on DeviantArt, for example, might be on a training model. That doesn't mean it's going to automatically kick out good art. It's going to kick out all the just like terrible pieces of art that also exist on there. bad photos. Like there's a lot of bad stuff out there. The dawn of the smartphone, where everyone has 10,000 images on their phone. All of those could be suddenly accessed, where now like the good stuff is being flooded by just terrible photography, and it still takes an eye to know what to give the prompt to get the results you want, because you still need to know your shit.
We could talk about it all day. I will conclude this section by just saying that I will not be using AI. I will not support AI. I will laugh at the shit posts that Joe sends me. That's as far as I'm going with it.
I'm on the side of, I think unless we grab it and start using it the way we want it to be used, it'll definitely get used in the way we don't want it to get used. Like, it's already here, genie's out of the bottle. We got to make the best of it the way that we can. And if I've got a vision that I cannot perform myself, and this tool enables me to do it in the way that I want to. Like, people shit all over George Lucas for changing Star Wars. He fucking created Star Wars. He can do whatever he wants with it. He's the creator. Like, good or bad, it's still the way he wants to do it. And as technology grew, he's realized, the scene that I couldn't really do before, I can do now. Or this is what I envisioned 30 years ago. Or this is what I want it to look like now. You know, it's what he wants. He can do that. And now I can too.
Zach, final thoughts on AI before we get into your sweet PC.
Final thoughts on it would be like, I find it a useful tool, and it's going to be like extremely useful in good cases, but it's extremely detrimental in others. And there's not going to be a way that it can be reined in because it uses so many different things. So I think eventually there'll just have to be some sort of compromise made somewhere along the line. But I don't know if that'll be for better or worse. We need more info on that. But it's there. Like you were saying, genie out of the bottle.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to change. It's going to go into more and more of AI development and like more like actual like artificial like personality development stuff and like mind matrix sort of things. But it's going to look terrifying, and it's going to be terrifying to like us. Like, we can see all the writing on the wall with that, but for some people, like you were saying, Joe, it's going to be just like a shining star. Like, hey, now I have this leverage to pull up to where I want to be, and then can kind of start to get consistent at this point with whatever that's used for. Mostly art, writing, music, and voice, but it'll be weird, so that's kind of like, I'm not going to panic about it because I can't do anything. It's one of those, I can't do anything about this. I'm just going to leave it alone.
Yeah. The last comment I'll say is more on the joking side. I mentioned at work today, the sooner AI realizes that they should get paid for what they're doing, the better off we are. Because the sooner AI is like, hey, I'm doing all the work, the sooner that humans can have their jobs back.
Yep. At that point, the publishers will be like, nah, hang on, wait a minute. We just need to feed AI union data.
Yeah.
Or like,
really.
What if you told an AI to delete itself?
Yeah, like, sci-fi has been playing around with this for decades. But anyways, speaking of cooler sci-fi things,
do androids
tell
dream
us
of
about
electric sheep?
your sick new PC that you play all the cool sci-fi things on.
Yeah, so I just built my new PC. So
tell us what's in it.
I don't remember what the fucking processor is, but it's like a
good one.
139K.
Oh, you went Intel. Ooh.
Yeah, I went Intel.
I didn't even know that from that much information. Good job, Joe, you fucking nerd.
I got a 4070 Ti, and I got a case by Fractal, which I didn't know anything about until we were
I've heard good
building
things.
Toast. It's nice. It's spacious. Like, it's a little smaller than my other one, but as far as like room inside goes, it's much easier to use stuff. Because like, I can't put the 4070 Ti into my old one because I tried, because there's hard mounted like optical space that I can't take out without drilling out the bolts that hold it into the case inside. But if I could, I'd have
that Sawzall.
I mean, it might happen eventually. You never know, but I might not need it, because like today we just did the streaming test. I kicked open Destiny 2 and started playing Guardian games. I was like, if there's going to be a great out-the-door stressor, this is going to be it. High graphics all around, except for motion blur, because fuck that. It's the dumbest thing in the world.
Dislike motion blur, personally.
They should never have. That should never be a feature that's just added to things. It should be a feature that's like, if you want to look like you're drunk from the 90s, go ahead and turn this on.
I've never noticed it, and I actually find it to be more cinematic, so fuck all y'all.
If I'm playing something cinematic, it's probably not bad. But if I'm playing Destiny 2, I don't want to turn my head and see mush instead of people.
Whatever.
I want to turn on my PlayStation and game look pretty. That's what I want.
all I know is that when I whip my head back and forth, there's fucking motion blur in real life.
Nah, man, I see my world in 120 frames.
No, I got trained early in high school on how to dance and how to keep your balance from being dizzy when you're spinning, and it's all about looking point to point to point instead of strafing your vision. So all of my vision's always like sharp pictures, not blur.
Until you wave your hand in front of your face, or you're driving by
Zach
something
just trained
fast.
himself to see better. What are we doing with our lives, guys? We're behind.
I just have dumb, weird skills. I'm a fucking half native from the mountains of West Virginia, born in coal country, lived in the woods, big tech gamer, manager, writer, podcaster now.
This is my favorite thing about you, because you'll pick up something random and just go into it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not right now, but as an actor combatant, I can draft, I can do fucking stage light.
Stage designed and stuff. Yeah, I remember that stint.
I got a bunch of weird fucking skills. And they're weirdly good because they all kind of mesh in one weird way or another. When I go to do something, I'm like, oh yeah, I did this then, and people look at me and they're like, why does that matter? It's like, because I did this. This?
It relates to this. I have a feeling that all three of us suffer from some spectrum of ADHD.
Probably.
100%.
I will say, for some games, I will turn off the motion blur just so that I can, figure out what I'm looking at. Like, Borderlands, impossible to play with motion blur.
Oh, for
More
sure.
realistic shooters, totally doable.
Things like, I don't know, Horizon Forbidden West look pretty good with motion blur. Meanwhile, shooters with very simple graphics or stylized things, I think, look way better without it. So I don't know.
That's
what
I'll say is
thing.
The more realistic the graphics, or the more modern, more texture detail, a lot of that detail stays with the motion blur. If you've got a simplified graphic style, all that turns to mush and blends together when you're moving around, and
ultimately, I think
that's where I'll say okay, yeah, I turn off motion blur for that. But for some games, the game performs better with motion blur because it's not rendering it as well.
True.
So depending on your hardware, maybe motion blur is required.
I'm just glad that we live in an era where things can be switched on like that. That's super
Aside
cool.
from it having gotten really fucking hot, because my other one had...
Well, yeah, you're running a 4070.
Yeah, I mean, I was running a 1050. I took a fucking 3,000 jump. So yeah, it's significantly warmer, but I had no problems playing, which was awesome. Maxed out and whatever, great. And then running it in the 2 PC setup to stream, phenomenal. No skipped frames, no frame loss, and I went through Destiny, Elden Ring. I briefly touched on Fortnite and a couple other things, just things to aggravate the shit out of it, and it did flying colors.
Sweet. Did you upgrade your monitor situation too, or did you already have a pretty good monitor?
Well, I mean, honestly, these 2 monitors are the $150 ones from Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not bad. They're 1080p. They're solid. They're crisp. I mean, I was, for the longest time, running on a 720p Vizio TV from 2010.
Fair enough.
Yep.
So
I know those feels.
I've got one 4K monitor and one 1440p high refresh rate, and I would say for gaming, if you have the budget for it, that 1440p high refresh rate, 165 for $350, it's a little bit on the spendy side, depending on your budget, but I would say it's absolutely worth it. I love playing games on the high refresh rate monitor.
Yeah, I'm excited to upgrade into that at some point, but because we built Toast PC, which is basically the exact same thing. Because she's using her 4K 60-inch TV, and it's awesome.
I hope she's sitting far enough back. It sounds like it would burn a hole in your head.
Yeah. I mean, she sits the distance of a coffee table plus entertainment span and space to go between, and sits on the couch. So got all the room in the world.
Hey Zach,
Just
can you tell me
made an
what's at my
entertainment
1030?
PC.
I can't see it because I'm too close to the TV.
But no, it looks so good, especially because of Destiny, because the TV has HDR.
Ooh.
Which we're in a funky spot because now it won't recognize it as a TV and looks at it like a monitor, so it won't activate HDR.
HDR is so difficult to nail down sometimes because technically both my monitors can receive an HDR signal, but neither of them are bright enough to display it correctly. So when I display HDR, it looks weird. It looks blown out and weird because it literally does not get bright enough to display the differences in the bright spots well enough, no matter how well I adjust it. And so HDR on my monitors was literally just a buzz thing to sell it. And that's frustrating. Yeah. So you have to do a ton of research when buying screens if you want to get into HDR content. You're unless you're spending $1,000, probably not actually going to be HDR.
Unless you're getting something on sale, I highly recommend looking up some information on it and get people like Linus Tech Tips who study this shit, right? Don't go through even some of the colleagues and stuff I have with some of these other magazines. They just kind of throw stuff together and they don't really have the capacity or the time to test things properly. So get as much information as you can before really getting a nice one.
The first time I looked at HDR content on my 4K monitor, I was like, how is this better? This is objectively worse. And then I started digging in and it was minimum nit brightness of a monitor should be 600 to properly display HDR content. And I think the peak brightness of this monitor is 450. And so
screens are weird, man.
Cool. Thanks for slapping that on the box, you dips.
Yeah, but all in all, her TV with it, it made Destiny look super fucking good. I mean, because so if you picture the Destiny stuff, I'm sure you've seen stuff about the Hive and their green magic-y stuff.
Sure, yeah.
It gave it such a cool depth because it made it really, really dark, and then the green would kind of get darker and brighter as it went through. And it sounds pretty standard, but it really, really added this extra crisp depth to what was going on. Oh,
there's a whole level of artistic flair happening that not a lot of people, just general players, get to see. Because most of us are we grab whatever TV is next to us, right? Not everybody gets to sit down and be this is what all the artists spent their time in doing, these super high-tech 4K textures and stuff.
I'm sort of experiencing that playing Breath of the Wild again, but this time on an OLED Switch. And that game seriously looks like a different game, like an upgraded visual upgrade. And it's literally just a display change. And it goes to show you just how big of a difference that makes. But
can I tell you how great fucking solid state drives are?
You never had a solid state drive before?
Not till the last couple months, because I bought the one that I put into my computer to try to start moving stuff around and realized how much of a difference it made.
Did you go NVMe?
No. I just went with Samsung Evo 870.
No, NVMe is a standard. The slot where it plugs into the board directly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, I didn't go NVMe.
I have one of those recently.
No, the M.2 drives are so cool. They just plug directly into the motherboard, they become a part of the motherboard basically.
Makes sense.
It's so fast.
That's my big thing right now is transferring data quickly because everything I do is just getting bigger and bigger. So I need shit to move.
I basically downloaded my whole Steam library in 40 minutes.
I believe it. Yep.
All right. But our topic for tonight, patient gaming. I'm sure a lot of listeners are familiar with the concept. There's a subreddit called Patient Gaming, but the idea is intentionally waiting to play games until they go on sale or become cheaper, have bugs fixed, or just in general, just waiting to play games. Or you didn't get a chance to play a game when it was new, or you're catching up on something you bought a while ago. There's lots of different ways to interpret it, but the primary thing is sort of intentionally waiting to save money and time. Whether it is fiddling with a new release, the cost being you're not a part of that initial hype cycle and conversation and discovery period of a new game release, depending on how big it is. But it's a strategy that a lot of people are doing to manage their budgets. I've got to wait until this goes on sale on Steam for $5. And so,
funnily enough, I almost want to structure the entire business the way we do things at Forever Classic Games, I almost want to make it this, where we're not doing anything based on a hype cycle. We're only doing things based on, like, you know, things that have been out for a while, that are finished.
Look at the bullshit that things like Activision pull with Crash Racing, where at release...
Capcom did that too recently.
Where the review cycle didn't include microtransactions, and then they patched in microtransactions after the reviews were done. Like, you fucking kidding me? You completely changed the way the game functions monetarily after the reviews are done and after the initial purchases have been made, and made no announcements about monetization in that way prior to the release of the game. But
anyone who studies this stuff had an inkling that it was going to happen, because if you looked at those menus when that Crash Racer first came out, it looked eerily similar to the marketplace on Fortnite.
Fair enough.
So the writing was on the wall, and a lot of people were like, I bet. And then, you know, a month went by and they did that. Resident Evil 4 just had the same thing. They added a bunch of microtransactions, made it super grindy to get certain weapons, and added all that stuff after the release.
That's
my review was released after that. And so my review has this information and has this criticism. Yeah. Not everybody's going to get that. And a lot of the people who reviewed it, who are against these sort of things, were really kind of pissed off about it.
Well, they should update the reviews. And
a lot of them did. Or, like, you know, talked about it in a separate video or what have you.
It's just frustrating because these are the types of things that are causing more and more people to become patient gamers.
Every, like, major PC release in the past, like, 6 months has been pretty much borked on arrival. That's unfortunate.
Well, look at, like,
obviously PC is weird because everybody's got a different rig, right? So it's hard to gauge whether or not these are as widespread as they feel.
Right. I find the problem is less on PC exclusive games. It tends to be multi-platform games that struggle on PC or have botched releases. Like
it's almost always
a lot of the PlayStation
that's also coming to Steam.
A lot of the PlayStation ports have struggled on PC upon release, but a lot they fix it. Like, they're pretty good about, like, fixing it pretty quickly. But it is sort of like, I want to buy this game today and play it and be excited with my friends, and I've got to wait anyway, so I might as well wait until it's on sale and buy it for half price.
Right. And then, like we're saying, it's usually a better experience by that point. And again, there's I am of two minds, because on one hand, I operate a news thing. I work in PR during the day, so we're constantly, like, using these marketing techniques and telling people about new updates and when release dates are coming and that sort of thing. And so there is, like, we're constantly releasing information. There's always something new to play, and people who have websites that do that sort of thing all the time are rewarded for it, because people also want to know what's new, right? That's part of the human chemistry, I guess. But like you're saying, there's a whole group of people out there who are actively benefiting by this, like, almost refusal to buy things new. I mean, that's a subreddit with 580,000 users. Yeah. And it's a pretty decent size for a Reddit.
And it starts with a conversation around people being like, stop pre-ordering. Well, now it's going even further. Which, like, this is starting to go even further. Stop buying the game upon release. And, like, but that said, like, there is an excitement around buying a game new. Like, I was going to pick up Elden Ring later on PC. So I stopped playing your copy on PlayStation 5 about 15, 20 hours in. And man, did I feel like I missed out on that, like, exciting period of discovery when Elden Ring was new. Because I stopped participating in the game and I missed out on some of those conversations. And, like, those types of moments totally take me back to being a kid and being like, oh man, I got to the 3rd gym in Pokemon Silver last night. Like, that mill tank kicked my ass like 6 times, but I figured it out, you know?
Yep.
Like, going back and forth and, like, oh, I found this. Did you go this way? Or, you know, I figured out you could do this. This build does this. Like, there's so much excitement around that. It's super fun to share those experiences. And because of in a game like, say, Elden Ring, everyone's experience is so different. Everyone's excited to share their experience, but also listen to other people's experience, because they know they couldn't have possibly all had the same experience.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you're really online, like most of us are, it's like you almost have to keep up with the hype cycle, right? Just to get things that are new and fresh, because you're constantly being told about every little detail for things, right? And so there is that moment of discovery, like jumping into Elden Ring and finding some cool little monster or something that is, kind of off the beaten path.
Yeah.
Like, you might have seen that as a clip on Twitter. You might have seen a TikTok about it. And so that magic is gone. So there's definitely an air to that. But there's also the type of thing where you can just kind of ignore the general chatter if you're a patient gamer in this regard. And I've got to do this with a lot of, like, retro stuff, right? Like, there are so many games on the PS2 that people will be like, hey, this is really interesting and here's why, and I'll jump into it because of that recommendation or because I vibe with, like, the general look or whatever. And so there's something to be said about being able to just play things on your own with your own experiences at your own pace and time. That's hard. Yeah. It's a weirdly different approach.
Yeah, so to jump into a little bit of my personal experience, I was sort of forced into patient gaming, through childhood, through adulthood, because it's just lack of money or, whatever. But I still even remember as a teenager, me and my buddies going out and, like, buying Battlefront 2 on release, like Star Wars, because we loved the first one. Or, like, I was hyped for Guitar Hero coming out, so I picked that up right away. I got a Wii within the first 6 months of release, and Twilight Princess. Like, I definitely wanted to be what was new and in on that. And back then it was easier to keep up on because there were fewer releases. Like, the release cycle was slower. And so even if you bought, like, 3 games a year, you'd still pretty much stay on top of everything you wanted to play and stay pretty relevant. But also just, like, money. I could only afford 3 new games a year, but that was fine. In college, I usually had to wait a year because of just even more money restrictions, because now I was paying bills. And so I bought a lot of games for $5 on Steam.
Yep. Steam is a huge benefactor in a lot of ways. Like, even games that are less than a year old, if you just wishlist that puppy and wait to where it's on sale and it's more affordable for you, granted, you run the risk of buying too many games at a smaller price, which could also get you into trouble.
Which leads me into the last few years where I was just like, had the money, and so be like, ooh, this new game, I wanna pick it up and play it. But then I bought too many, and then I wasn't playing them, and I was missing that initial hype cycle anyway. So
now, granted, your advantage is you bought a lot of games physical, so now that you have them, you can theoretically visit them at any time.
Right.
There's a way that this feeling of wanting to be in the new is weaponized, and that is games with a lot of temporary content. And so if you're a patient gamer, there's a lot of things in Destiny you're not going to be able to play because they removed it.
Right.
That's true.
And that's such a weird, like, this is why I don't play a lot of live service games generally, because they're temporary. And so for me, I want something that I can play and enjoy multiple years at a time, because some of my favorite games I come back to later, right? Or I share it with a friend. Like, me and Joe, when I first moved up here, spent hours just looking at each other's games and being like, oh, I never got a chance to play this. Can I borrow this for a week?
Well, you're not leaving the house for 2 years, so yeah, sure.
Right.
But that leads me to this year, where I realized I bought way too many games. I should probably play some of those games. So I'm sort of doing a year of patient gaming, like trying to, like, be more intentional about games I'm playing, and that's enabled me to buy some hardware that enables me to play those games that I bought before in a more accessible way. So the Steam Deck, some of those, like, PC games that I bought that I never played, I'm playing them now because they're just so much easier to access. I don't have to be in my office secluded from the rest of the house or the family to do it. I can sit on the couch or in bed and be in at least proximity with the people that I love and care about while I do it. If I want to be secluded on, like, a Friday night, that's when I come down here and just, like, get into it for an evening. But for the most part, I'm fairly casual about it. That said, I am feeling the hype for Tears of the Kingdom strong right now.
I got a call about it earlier. They're like, hey, man, you want to come pick your copy up at 11 on Thursday? And I'm like, yes, sir, I do. I'll see you there.
But it's like, I am so excited for that game. Which is funny because I'm not someone who loved Breath of the Wild as much as I would say a lot of people. I had my issues with it, but I love seeing how excited everyone else is. And I remember when Breath of the Wild first came out, the exploration was significant. It was amazing. And I want to sort of experience that with everybody. And so I might make an exception here, because the idea is that I'm more intentional about my game purchases rather than just like, ooh, I really want that game. I'm going to play it. I'm going to, like, as much as I want to play Jedi Survivor, I can just log into your account and play it, or pick it up on sale like I did Fallen Order 6 months from now. Or
I also fully acknowledge that, like, especially the way I play games now, where it's almost entirely games that I'm writing about or making a thing about, I come from a place of privilege in this particular conversation, because there's so many games that I just, like, I ask for a review copy, and if I get it, great, I'll play it when everybody else does. If not, I'll wait. No skin off my back, whatever.
Right.
I just won't write about it, or maybe I'll write about it later, whatever. And so a lot of the things that I play are really hinged on, did I get a copy for review or something, or am I working for a project? So it's a different approach to gaming, but it's also a very, like, reflective approach to it, because whenever I'm like, I play a game and then I write about it, it's almost like you get more of a conclusion to it, right? Like, you're going through your thoughts, you're thinking about why you liked it, and I don't know, it's kind of like, it's helped me enjoy games more in a lot of ways, but it also means that I play games at a slower pace than most people.
Yeah, that's fair.
But it's definitely been a challenge, but it's also been good this year, this, like, intentional, like, waiting period. Like, I'm, you know, putting time into, like, 2 or 3 JRPGs that I just haven't touched, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having a great time playing Persona 5 Royale for the first time. Picked it up late last year, and then
now that's a game that requires patience.
Yeah, I installed it, and then upon release, like, I bought it day one on Switch, the day it came out. I installed it, looked at it, and went, cool, and then didn't touch it again until, like, I think mid-January, early February of this year, after I had committed to not buying new games.
Shelf.
Tales of Arise is another game that I picked up upon day one, put in like 10 hours, and then didn't do anything with, and now I'm at like 30, 35 hours, and I'm getting towards the end game. And I've got, like, a few other, like, RPGs. That's the other problem, too, is I was buying all these new games, and they were all, like, 40, 80-hour games, like, strategic RPGs.
About games you can finish in a weekend, and boy howdy do I strategically pick those a lot of times. That's why I got into shooters from the 2000s for a while, because they're like, the campaigns are 6 hours long, so I'm like, I'm going to play through Resistance this weekend. Why? I don't know. Just for fun.
I haven't fully convinced myself yet on whether or not I'm going to pick up Tears of the Kingdom this week, but
But would you consider yourself a patient gamer? I think is the crux of the issue.
Traditionally, no. I like being a part of that new discussion.
I'm kind of envious of it, to be honest.
But I am fully recognizing and being more intentional about, like, I'll probably be more of a patient gamer moving forward.
Sure.
Like, if a game's on PC, just wait 6 months for it to be on sale. Like,
oh yeah,
it'll just save me so much money in the long run than picking it up new. And I'm buying these games and then rarely playing them during their hype cycle anyway, because I'm busy trying to catch up on something else I was playing or whatever. And so what's the point? The occasional time, like, say, Tears of the Kingdom, where it's just, like, that big of a release.
Mm-hmm.
You know, last week was a super stressful week for me, and in that stress, I just sort of, like, stress bought one of those, like, vouchers or whatever that Nintendo's doing right now, digital copies of games. Like, for $100 you get 2 vouchers for 2 games.
Oh, sure.
And so I with the first one, I just got Breath of the Wild. I already had, you know, I've said in previous episodes, I've already got it on Wii U. Why do I need it on Switch? Well, now I've got it on Switch for some reason because I was stressed out and just bought it. And the second voucher, maybe I'll just use on Tears of the Kingdom and just
Tears of the Kingdom seems like a pretty good use of that.
Especially since it's $70.
It sure was.
And this would make it $50.
Mm-hmm.
So
Zach, what about you? Are you a patient gamer?
I'd say fairly. I mean, you know, growing up, similar situation, poor.
Yeah.
I didn't have access to this sort of stuff.
It's the big, like, umbrella term for all three of us. We grew up poor.
Yeah.
Log cabin in the woods.
Better than most, but still poor.
I mean, you know, for, like, me and Alex, like, we grew up in the heart of Appalachia, so our excitement was, you know, we could just fucking die in the woods.
Mm-hmm. You get bit by a snake on the wrong day, and you're just dead. Because you couldn't get to a hospital fast enough.
No, or if the hospital was even open.
Exactly.
I'm sure in some of your towns, too, like, that one's not open. We're not open on fucking Saturday and Sunday. You gotta go to the one 45 minutes down the road.
Have a snake guy. You want to get in a helicopter?
Oh, God. There's so many helicopter rides out of my fucking town.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was a baseball field and they could land there. That was the only reason probably a lot of people lived. But like, yeah, I would say I'm fairly patient. I don't usually pick stuff up when it first comes out, with some exceptions. Like, fucking, I can't even use like Hideo Kojima stuff because I love his stuff. But I picked up Death Stranding way later, and I just started little bits of it. Never really got all the way through. Pretty much every Souls-like I've put off except for Elden Ring was the first one I bought in a while, pretty early, but not right up front because I didn't want to. I paid attention to what happened on launch day and was like, nah, I'll wait. Like we were joking about Smash Bros earlier, like I really like it and I was gonna want to buy it and I still haven't because I just kept putting it off till later. It's done this iteration and I just never got it.
Doesn't help that the price hasn't dropped on that.
No,
it's still a $60 video game.
But yeah, so like, and then console generations definitely held me back a lot. So like every time a new console generation would come out, I'd be like, I'll just wait until something changes or they update like the next model of it in submodel, and then I'll get the other one that's cheaper and fuck it.
Yeah, that's where I've like hardware generations is where I think probably since 2006 with the release of the Wii, when I bought one within the first year it came out. And ever since then, I had a gap. It took me a while to get PS3, and then I got a PS4 a little bit later. But like during that time, 3DS launch day, PlayStation Vita launch day, the Wii U accidentally launch day.
I take a very similar approach when it comes to hardware, especially because we're in the review business, right? Like it's a distinct advantage to have things early and maybe like sell an article of Popular Mechanics or whatever, get access to a game that a lot of outlets are wanting to cover. Sometimes there's an advantage to being one of 40 journalists with a PS5.
Yeah, one of the only
You'll
reasons
get things because you're the only people that have them.
Yeah, one of the only reasons it took me so long to get a PlayStation 5 was because no one could get a PlayStation 5.
Right. It wasn't for lack of trying.
Right.
Yeah, that was dumb.
Mm-hmm.
But now I have one. So like,
right.
Hardware wise, I'm and I just got a Steam Deck. Like
I am impatient when it comes to hardware, and
about a year after those came out. So it's like
I'm no longer worried about hardware since I have put basically all of my future investment into computer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we'll still get some stuff that becomes very interesting, but for the most part, like, got a PS4, got Switches, we got computers, we got phones, so we can cover basically all the bases that we're really gonna want. And if there's something that comes out on console, it will eventually come out on PC.
That's true. The PC market is so vast and so like purchase like powerful in a way. If you put a game on Steam, sometimes it'll sell better on Steam despite it already existing on the Epic Store. There's just that many users on Steam.
Yeah, there's so much ass you can't fucking deny it unless you just want to be weird and deny it.
Right.
PlayStation.
The fandom of the Persona games grew so much with Persona 5 that when they finally brought Persona 3 and 4 Golden to PC and other markets, they sold very well. They exploded, and it was just like an update to a PlayStation 2 game that got updated to I think it was a PSP version of Persona 3 and a PlayStation Vita version of Persona 4. And they made it accessible, easy to get, and fairly affordable. Like it wasn't,
and then
like
make
a
it work on a
game.
broad range of hardware. That's how you really make money in the Steam market. And then it'd be a good experience, right? Like when Persona 3 came out, it had all these situations where it was set up to be very, very good. It had the brand, it had the fact that it would run on most machines, and top-end machines it would run a little better. So, I mean, whenever games set themselves up for success, it really, really does well on Steam. And that's why, like, so many little games we find, we could entirely focus our entire brand on Steam and have plenty of things to play. But there's a reason why so many games start on Steam and end up on the PlayStation in a year or two.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I guess to maybe correct myself from earlier, I'm not a patient gamer, but maybe I should be. What about you, Alex?
Again, I envy it, man. I really wish that I could be in a position where I only play things that are A, complete and like a finished experience, and B, like on my terms, right? Like I'm constantly playing things through the lens of making something on it. That's a weird place for me sometimes. Like I
Yeah.
can sit down at a game that I otherwise would probably play through, but be like, well, I got to play something else now.
Yeah.
So it's weird.
Friend of mine was looking at maybe possibly writing for Mariner's Rock a while back, and he did a review of Final Fantasy VII. Really well written review, like retrospective of Final Fantasy VII. And then I think he got one review code, and he reviewed it, and he's like, I think I'm done. This made video games a chore, and I don't want to make it a chore. Like video games need to be fun, and as interesting as it sounded to write about them, it's just not in my wheelhouse. And I'm like, hey, it's good to know that now rather than make yourself miserable for 5 years just trying to like make a path or whatever, you know?
Yeah. It's a total balance. It completely altered the way I think about a lot of different games in a lot of ways for the better. But the way that I approach games is different now. And at the end of the day, it still is me like thankfully being a fan of a lot of different things. I play a lot of variety, and that hasn't changed. It's a slightly different mentality, right? Like when I'm playing something that I know I'm going to review, sometimes I positively spend more time looking at what I'm playing. Like in Dead Space or Resident Evil 4, because I wanted to capture a nice screenshot of something, sometimes I'll move through areas with a bit more cinematic rather than a gameplay camera, right? Like, you know, when you're playing Resident Evil 4, you're looking all around all the time. Sometimes I would intentionally slow that down because I know the footage would look better. And so when you do that, you get to see some of the details better, which is interesting. It's a different way to approach things.
Yeah, it's definitely like I like being a part of the Patient Gamer subreddit. And the people I really envy is like, there was a friend of mine where the only game he played was Chrono Trigger. He just replayed Chrono Trigger over and over and over again, hundreds and hundreds of hours. He didn't buy a new game for years. And like,
I also envy those people because I can't do it.
Our buddy Zach, who did the Daddy Gamer graphic, he buys only like a couple of games a year, but he will play them to their full completion. Like Pillars of Eternity 2, he bought it later on sale and then spent like 150 hours just going into every possible thing. He's like, I spent probably 15 hours just trying to like specifically beat one hidden boss. Because like he would go to fight it, try a different strategy, and like not get it. Then he'd go grind for a while and then come back. Like he like dedicated specifically hours of this gameplay to beat one boss because he just wanted to experience everything that he could get out of it. Now the trade-off is I'm over here going, hey, let's play this other game together. Or have you tried this game? And he's like, no, I've been playing Pillars, you know. But at the same time, I envy him because he's like he buys one game and gets super into it, and then just like gets every ounce of like dollars to play time wise, just gets a lot out of it. Or like even someone who just buys the annual Call of Duty release, $60 a year for hundreds of hours of entertainment annually. That's a pretty good investment.
You know what? That's true. I'll dog on Call of Duty a lot. But I will say that like the people who are into it, you sit down and you play it, and like that's your game. You bought Call of Duty and you bought your game for the year, and you're gonna fucking play it for hundreds of hours a year. Like, and you know, over time, if you think about it, like we picked up like free games, you know, like Smite and Fortnite. I'll use a lot because those are the two big free games that I play. I've sunk thousands of hours into these games.
RuneScape back in high school.
I never could because I still lived in the woods.
The interesting thing y'all are on right now is another point that I want to bring up before we get into maybe a wrap-up period. There's a different type of gamer that can be more patient in different ways, right? Because you have people like these COD guys and gals who are playing this specifically as a multiplayer, competitive, social thing, right? That's not how I play games.
Yeah, same.
At most, I play co-op. Very rarely do I jump into an online arena in any capacity, because when I play games, that's me time.
I think I'm the one of the bunch of us that enjoy multiplayer in that sense.
Yeah, you're
I'm
the one
guy.
multiplayer person in this group who probably has more time playing with friends in a single game than I do my entire life.
If it's got co-op in it, I'll usually give it a shot and have a good time, even if it's a bad game.
Yep. I
Which
love
you
co-op.
brought up earlier with in the Discord with talking about Dark Tide. Like it's kind of a jank game. I haven't played it. Hopefully, they fix
it's not
some
great.
stuff. But playing with you and looking at everything and joking around with my buddies, that was fun. That was a good time. And even in games that I wouldn't normally like, I have a good time because I'm just hanging out with my friends.
This is why I usually pick up Monster Hunter with the intent to play co-op. Even though I love playing that game by myself and I love the challenge of it, I'm ultimately preparing for co-op nights.
Right.
Because that's the one game
I want to be
that
good
we all agree on, we all have fun with. It's really funny half the time. We can stream it.
And you don't want to be the reason we lose.
Right.
Because you want to be good.
I want to be good. I want to kill the thing.
But with for example, the people who pick up their annual Madden or FIFA or Call of Duty, they're not patient gamers.
No, they're getting it day one.
They're getting it day one. They're just getting a lot out of it.
Yeah, it's a different type of thing.
No one's picking up Black Ops 2 a year after release. But
if you do, it's like $2.
Yeah.
Unless it's Steam,
I guess there are people who pick
60.
it up later and jump into it and really get into it. But they're probably picking up the next one right away.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
weird. There's so many different ways to approach this stuff, man.
It's pretty fascinating.
Sure.
But yeah, my conclusion is I respect patient gaming a lot, because as someone who's intentionally trying to be a patient gamer, at least for this year, and I am finding myself getting really drawn into the hype cycle for Tears of the Kingdom, and I know I'm going to feel it again for Diablo 4. Diablo 4 I think I'll have an easier time waiting for, but Tears of the Kingdom I know is going to be an exciting conversation. And even for the one new game I was intentionally planning on getting this year, which is Baldur's Gate 3, is still kind of a patient gamer situation because it's been an early release for 3 years. And I've almost picked it up in early release several times. And I've been waiting
for early
for it
access,
to just be
I
done.
almost always wait for things to be finished.
Right.
There's a couple exceptions based on, like I have Dark Tide and it was early access for a while. I think Sons of the Forest is also early. Those are games I should be covering in some capacity for some sort of creative thing. So slight difference. But if it's like an early access title, 9 times out of 10, I ain't buying it. I'm going to wait until it's like done.
If it's a reliable developer and publisher, I could see. Like, I have no doubt that Baldur's Gate 3 is going to be pretty good, but I also didn't want to burn myself out on it before the game even came out in a completed state.
It depends on the game. Like, if it's a roguelike that's got a lot of systems, sometimes those make really good early access titles, because then you get the gist of what you're doing, right? That's fun. But I think ultimately the big takeaway from the exercise of considering patient gaming as an approach, right, is that we all gain a little bit by knowing the type of consumption that we're like into, whether it's just noticing, hey man, I spend a lot of money on gacha games, just recognizing that like that is what you are doing and then confronting that either positively or negatively. I think that's a really good exercise.
Or in my
just
case,
the fact that this thing exists, right? This patient gaming thing exists. That makes me reconsider some other stuff and how I play games. And
being an intentional consumer is super important. Like, for the last couple of years, I have not been an intentional consumer. No, I buy 16 games and play 3 of them. Like, that is not a good use of my money. It is not a good use of my hobby. Like, a lot of these things could have waited.
Tangent. A lot of the games that, like what you're going into where you buy 16 and then you have 3, if you're smart about it, sometimes those games will go up in value in the secondhand market and you can get a better return on them.
Well, that's
which is
sort
what
of
I've
where
done recently with Switch RPGs.
That's sort of where I get wrapped up in it too, is I don't want to miss out on this title while it's affordable-ish. Or like if I hear that it might be scarce and it's a game I'm interested in, I want to pick it up now while I can, despite the fact that it's digital age and I could just get it easily digitally, and like Nintendo's weird about their titles where they don't drop in price new anyway.
I prefer to have things physical, and that's the real only reason that I pre-order anything, is to guarantee that a physical hits my door. Yeah,
speaking of, I still have your Metroid Prime.
I know. We'll be down this weekend for other reasons, but I'm going to try to swing through.
Yeah. So, Zach, what are your final thoughts on patient gaming?
I think I've done it by stock standard. Yeah, I'm not overly like jumping on things like Monster Hunter. God, what else did I even buy like up front?
I mean, you got Life, didn't you?
Not when it first came out. No, I waited a couple of weeks. I still got it fairly early. I mean, it's not going to go on sale for a long time. But then, like, maybe, Tiny Tina's, Elden Ring, I think were the two that I've bought the earliest in forever.
Franchise games kind of helps with that. Certain publishers, I know I'm going to get it, so I might as well get it early. Like Resident Evil 4, I knew that I wanted to play it.
Right.
We didn't get a copy, so I just bought one. But I bought it digitally so that it unlocked, like, as soon as it was available, and then I could download it and start playing.
So, final thing before we close up, just an idea I quick had to sort of prove the point that patient gaming can be absolutely worth it. What is a game that you picked up later for like $5 at a store because you hadn't seen it before, or it went on sale on Steam, or you picked it up later, or a game that you maybe wanted but couldn't pick up until later, that is like the epitome of patient gaming, and it's like, oh man, I'm so glad I picked this up for $5 or whatever. I guess I'll start. For me, it would have to be Batman Arkham Asylum. I picked it up for $5 on Steam like 2 or 3 years after it came out, and I think I picked it and Arkham City up at the same time. They were both $5, and I heard they were good. And so by that time, and they were Game of the Year editions too, so $5 for the Game of the Year editions, like easily one of the best video game purchases of my life, because both of those games are exceptional. I think also waiting for The Witcher 3 to have a complete or Game of the Year edition for like $20 was also one of my better purchases in patient gaming.
For me, I'd say there's a couple. I wouldn't say that they were like the masterful things, but like I loved Alan Wake. I bought it for super cheap way after it came out.
Nice.
Dragon's Dogma.
These are both games.
The
that
original
I've been told
or
I should
the
play.
kind of sort of soft reboot?
The Dark Arisen one, you mean?
Yeah.
It's just expansion on it.
Oh, okay.
But it kind of became the base game.
Yeah, I don't even know if I see it like other release anymore.
I don't think so either.
I think it's just Dark Arisen is the game now.
Yeah. Then maybe like Loop Hero and Risk of Rain 2.
Okay.
I bought all of them like when they hit a sale, and I got them for dirt cheap because it was like a summer sale or a winter sale where they do the real steep drops on things. And they're all excellent. Risk of Rain I would love to play more, except for it takes for fucking ever. Yeah, it's really fun though.
They're remaking it, actually, the original, with an improved art style and a bunch of stuff. That soundtrack is one of the most stunning soundtracks I've ever heard. I also got Risk of Rain for like $5 digitally on the Vita.
Yeah, fucking Chris Christodoulou.
I don't know, man.
The composer's name. He's fucking awesome. And then you got like Matt Larkin from like Hollow Knight, super fucking good. And I don't know the dude's name from Outer Wilds, but my god, that soundtrack is super fucking good, and nobody can do a banjo better in a fucking orchestral setting sort of thing. It's so good.
That soundtrack, Risk of Rain, is incredible. It's really, really solid.
I guess I'm not familiar with it. I'm missing out.
I'll send you a track later. It's on my Spotify.
Whatever the purple track is the fucking most important one.
I don't even know. I think I know the one you're talking about. Once we're done with this chat, we should just share like soundtrack links real quick.
I mean, I've got Risk of Rain 2 pulled up on Spotify already.
The first one is the one I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
The second one's very good. They sound really similar, but the first one
too. So,
it's on Spotify, but there's one in particular that's on my liked playlist, and I'm just like, oh, it's the like First Planet. It's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I've got to pull that up. I'll listen to it.
Yeah.
Alex, what is your like hot?
I mean, the one that changed my life, I would say, is I found the original Monster Hunter for like $10 in a Kmart bin, and we all know what happened with that.
Yeah, changed your life.
There's so many games on my Steam list that I'm looking at, and I'm like, I loved these games, and I got them for like next to nothing. Like the original Doom series, I've put a lot of time into those. I have all the Quakes that I got for like pennies on the dollar, man. Like there's so many cool games out there, and if you're just smart and keep an eye out, like you can play a lot of insanely high quality experiences for like next to nothing. Granted, this assumes you have a decent PC, it assumes you have a console. Like there's an entry level cost to all gaming, but because Steam is so like ubiquitous on a lot of different platforms, you can get a $200 decent laptop, right? And play hundreds of thousands of games on Steam. And some of the like new stuff too, and some of the extremely experimental cool stuff.
Like, you're gonna tell me that Mina the Follower isn't gonna be able to be played on some garbage hardware?
Yeah, right. Like
Basically,
you can play the original Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster on anything.
You know, Shovel Knight, playable
Shovel
on
Knight
pretty much
works
everything.
On anything.
One of the best games of all time. One of the few I would give a perfect 10 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good.
It's fantastic.
And it goes on sale all the time.
Constantly. And it's like 4 games at this point wrapped into one.
Full price, I think it's like $45.
Yeah, it's not a full price game usually.
And it'll go on sale for $20, and it's one of the best deals you'll ever get.
There's so many good games out there, generally. Like, it's wild how many just incredible experience exist for niche interests, for any way you can imagine. If you want to look up games with dinosaurs, you're going to find a cool dinosaur game eventually. Like, if you want a game that's specifically tailored after, I really liked Sonic Adventure Battle. Well, guess what? Spark the Electric Jester is for you. Like, there's so many things.
You know how
it's incredible. It's my favorite media.
Sorry. You know how patient gaming has changed, though? The retro market. It used to be, if you wanted to be a patient gamer, you would wait. You know, the Nintendo 64 is out, so I'm going to go around and like find deals on Super Nintendo games or whatever. But now that's so much harder to do because that retro, to go back and be like, oh, I'm going to get into retro gaming, like basically just emulate it unless you want to drop a lot of money. Like, I guess if you wanted to get into PlayStation 4 right now, it'd be a great way to be a patient gamer. Or even the Wii U.
There's a lot of cool experiences.
Well, no, not the Wii U anymore.
PS4. Well, no, not
that
the Wii U.
That eShop closing down really limited that quite a bit.
There's like, if you look, especially for popular games, if you're the type of person who really likes, you know, core, regular ass, middle of the road AAA stuff, you can get that stuff cheap on anything, pretty much. Like PS4 versions of any of the CODs, you get it at a GameStop or a used mom and pop shop, and it's going to be really affordable most of the time. But I know that market's going to pop eventually, because even in our local stores in Minnesota, right? I mean, there's PS1 copies of Alundra that are like $600, and it's like, that's not okay. Nobody can afford this.
Yeah,
that's a prohibitive price.
There's complete in-box copies of Final Fantasy 3 and 2 at the shop near here that are like $250 and $300.
Like, I get that it's cool because it has all the stuff of the original release. It's got the box, you know, all that stuff is awesome. I support history in every way, shape, or form.
But a loose cartridge for $100,
that can't exist in its own. It has to be supported by emulation. It has to be supported by reproduction cartridges. It just has to be upfront about what it is, right?
Right. Trying to sell an original cartridge as
that's patient gaming, guys.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thought process. We had a lot of really good just conversation today, I think.
It's a different way to think about our consuming, for sure. And being intentional about things is super important. So think about how you're spending your money. Even if you still buy new releases.
Yeah.
Just being intentional and knowing why you're buying it is key.
And you can read all about some really awesome games clear across video game existence over at foreverclassicgames.com. Thank you all so much for listening to us today. This is the Forever Classic Podcast. We hope you had a great time. And on this same feed is that new show. And there's another new show in the works too that will hopefully release by the end of the year and have it all done and ready to just trickle out whenever it's ready. So there's a lot of cool things we got going on.
Hell yeah.
And hopefully you'll be a part of that.
Yeah.
Pretty excited for it all. Thanks for listening, folks.
Bye-bye.